Welcome to the Lost in Disclosure. Tonight, we drift into the dark water. Chapter 1, A Lullaby Beneath the Waves. Not with fear, not with urgency, but with the slow, measured breath of those who have learned to listen to the silence. Because beneath the surface of the world's oceans, beneath the gentle roll of waves that cradle continents to sleep, there exists a realm we have barely begun to understand. A realm where light moves in ways that defy our charts, where shadows take form and dissolve again into the blackness, where witnesses, for centuries, have seen something they cannot name. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself suspended between two worlds. Above you, the faint shimmer of moonlight filtering through water. Below you, the infinite descent into midnight blue, then indigo, then a darkness so complete it feels like the edge of existence itself. And there, in that impossible depth, a light appears. Not the harsh beam of a submarine, not the familiar glow of bioluminescent plankton drifting like stars through liquid space. This light is different. It pulses. It moves with intention. It circles, descends, rises again, and then, without warning, it vanishes. This is not fiction. This is testimony. For as long as humans have sailed the oceans, they have reported these encounters. Ancient mariners spoke of ghost fires beneath their wooden hulls. Medieval texts describe luminous wheels spinning in the deep, vast as cathedrals, turning slowly in the Arabian Sea. Modern naval officers, equipped with radar and sonar, have tracked objects moving at impossible speeds beneath the waves, objects that leave no wake, emit no heat signature, and disappear from instruments as suddenly as they appeared on them. We have given them names: unidentified submerged objects, USOs, anomalous marine phenomena. But names do not explain them. Names are simply the nets we cast into the dark, hoping to catch something we can hold, examine, and file away. Yet these lights slip through our language as easily as they slip through water. Some say they're natural, reflections of bioluminescence magnified by the curvature of waves and the tricks of tired eyes. Others point to secret military craft, submarines running silent, testing new propulsion systems in the uncharted trenches where no treaty forbids them. And some others, the dreamers and the watchers, the ones who stare longest into the abyss, suggest something more unsettling, that we are not alone in these depths, that the ocean, which covers more than 70% of our planet, may harbor intelligence we have yet to meet. Intelligence that watches us from below as we watch the stars from above. But this is not a story about answers. This is a story about the questions themselves. about the strange and ancient relationship between humanity and the sea, about what it means to be a species that evolved on land, yet is drawn again and again to the edge of the water, staring out, staring down, wondering what looks back. Tonight, we begin that journey. We will travel through eyewitness accounts and declassified reports, through sonar recordings and underwater footage, through the voices of scientists who have spent their lives mapping the ocean floor, and the testimonies of sailors who have seen things science cannot explain. We will explore the geography of mystery, the deep trenches, the thermal vents, the lightless valleys where pressure crushes steel yet life persists. And we will ask, as others have asked before us, what if the lights beneath the sea are not anomalies at all? What if they are signals, messages written in a language older than words, transmitted through water, through darkness, through time itself? What if the ocean has been trying to tell us something all along, and we simply haven't learned how to listen? The hum of the deep is calling. The lullaby beneath the waves has begun. And whether you believe in what lies below, or whether you remain anchored in skepticism, one thing is certain: the mystery endures. It has endured for millennia, and it will continue long after we have closed our eyes and drifted back to the surface. So let us descend together. Let us move slowly, carefully through the layers of shadow and light. Let us suspend judgment and simply witness. Because in the end, it is not certainty that guides us into the unknown. It is curiosity. And curiosity, like water, finds its way into every crack, every hidden chamber, every secret the world has yet to reveal. The lights are waiting. They have always been waiting. Let us go and meet them. But before we can understand what moves in the deep, we must first understand the deep itself. And that is where our journey truly begins. Not in the encounters, but in the vast, silent expanse that makes such encounters possible. Because the ocean is not just a body of water. It is a world within a world, a frontier more alien than the surface of Mars. A place where darkness is not the absence of light, but the presence of something else entirely. And it is to that world, the unwritten, uncharted, unmapped world beneath the waves, that we now turn. Chapter 2: The Ocean's Unwritten Map. If you were to drain the oceans, you would see a landscape that rivals any alien planet. Mountains taller than Everest, rising from abyssal plains. Canyons deeper than the Grand Canyon, splitting the seafloor like ancient scars. Volcanic ridges stretching for thousands of miles, spewing superheated water into the freezing blackness. fields of thermal vents where life thrives without sunlight, feeding on chemicals and heat, evolving in isolation from the rest of the biosphere. And vast, silent deserts of silt and sediment where nothing moves for centuries but the slow drift of particles settling like snow. This is the true face of Earth, not the thin crust of land where we build our cities and plant our flags, but the deep oceanic realm that covers more than 2/3 of the planet. And yet, we know less about this world than we know about the surface of the moon. Less even than we know about distant exoplanets circling stars hundreds of light years away. It is estimated that we have explored less than 20% of the ocean floor. Some say the true figure is closer to 5%. 5%. Imagine that for a moment. Imagine knowing only 5% of your own home, 5% of the hallways, the rooms, the basements, and attics. The rest? Darkness, silence, speculation. And in that darkness, there is room for almost anything. The deepest point we know of is the Mariana Trench, plunging nearly 11 kilometers below the surface. At that depth, the pressure is more than 1,000 times what we experience at sea level. Enough to crush a human body instantly, enough to collapse most submarines like tin cans. And yet, when filmmaker James Cameron descended to the bottom in 2012, he found life. Amphipods, microbial mats, creatures adapted to conditions that would annihilate us in seconds. But the Mariana Trench is not alone. There are other trenches, other abyssal zones scattered across the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean. Each one is a world unto itself. Each one holds secrets we have not yet uncovered. And between them, stretching for thousands of kilometers, are the mid-ocean ridges, underwater mountain ranges where tectonic plates pull apart and new crust is born. Here, hydrothermal vents spew black smoke and sulfur into the water, creating oases of life in the desert of the deep. Tube worms, eyeless shrimp, bacteria that feed on hydrogen sulfide and methane, producing energy without a single photon of sunlight. This is not the ocean of postcards and beach vacations. This is the ocean of extremes, the ocean of the unknown. And it is in this ocean, this vast, unmapped, uncharted frontier, that the lights have been seen. Consider the scale for a moment. The Pacific Ocean alone covers more than 60 million square miles. That is larger than all the land masses on Earth combined. Within that expanse are underwater canyons, seamounts, and plateaus that we have never visited, regions where the seafloor drops away into blackness, and our instruments can tell us only the barest outline of what lies below. Sonar can map the contours, yes, but it cannot tell us what moves through those contours. It cannot tell us what might hide in the caves and crevices and lava tubes that honeycomb the ocean floor. It cannot tell us what might be watching. The ocean is not empty. It never has been. Even in the regions we consider lifeless, the so-called ocean deserts, where nutrients are scarce and sunlight never reaches, there is always something. Always movement. Always the faint trace of biology clinging to existence. And if life can adapt to such extremes, if it can thrive in boiling water and crushing pressure and total darkness, then what else might be possible? What else might be down there, beyond the reach of our lights and our instruments, living in a silence so profound that even sound cannot penetrate it? This is the question that haunts oceanographers and explorers. Not because they believe in sea monsters or underwater civilizations, but because they understand the simple mathematics of possibility. The ocean is enormous, it is deep, it is dark, and it is largely unknown. And in the unknown, probability bends in strange directions. If something wanted to remain hidden on Earth, the deep ocean would be the perfect place to do so. Not because it is hostile, though it is. Not because it is inaccessible, though it is, but because it is ignored. Humanity looks up. We scan the skies with telescopes. We launch probes to distant moons and planets. We search for signals from alien civilizations light years away. But we rarely look down. We rarely commit the resources, the funding, the attention required to map and explore the world beneath our own waves. And so the ocean remains a mystery, a question mark etched into the surface of our planet, a place where the boundaries between the known and the unknown blur and dissolve like phosphorescence in the current. It is here, in this vast, unwritten map, that our story unfolds. Not in the shallows where sunlight dances and tourists swim, but in the deep, in the trenches and ridges and abyssal plains where light is a memory and pressure is a language only the water understands. It is here that sailors have seen things they cannot explain. Here that submariners have tracked objects that should not exist. Here that the lights appear, rising from the below, moving through the darkness with purpose and grace, leaving no trace but the testimony of those who witness them. And as we prepare to dive deeper into those testimonies, let us hold this truth in mind. The ocean is not a blank canvas. It is a living document written in currents and chemistry, in biology and geology, in time itself. And somewhere within its pages, hidden between the lines we have yet to read, there may be a chapter we never expected. A chapter that does not begin with us. But the story doesn't end with geography. Maps and measurements tell us where things are, but they do not tell us what they mean. They cannot translate the chill that runs through a sailor's spine when, alone on night watch, he sees a light rise from the deep, silent, steady, impossibly bright. For that, we must turn to the witnesses themselves, to the men and women who have stood at the edge of the unknown and looked into it, who have returned with stories that do not fit neatly into the margins of our understanding. Stories that linger like echoes in the dark. And so we move now from the map to the sighting, from the geography of mystery to the living testimony of those who have seen the lights and lived to wonder what they were. Chapter 3: The Blue Beacons. They come without warning, sometimes as single points of light drifting slowly beneath the hull of a ship, other times as formations, 3, 5, a dozen, moving in perfect synchrony, tracing patterns in the water like choreographed dancers. They glow with a luminescence that seems almost alive, pulsing gently, shifting in color from pale blue to green to white. They do not flicker like fire. They do not flash like machinery. They simply exist, suspended in the deep, radiating a light that has no obvious source. And then, just as suddenly, they disappear. Sailors have reported these sightings for centuries, long before the age of submarines and sonar, before we had the technology to peer beneath the waves with anything more sophisticated than a weighted line and a prayer. Mariners spoke of lights in the water. Ghost fires, they called them. Sea lanterns, the devil's torches, names drawn from superstition and awe, attempts to frame the inexplicable within the language of myth. But as technology advanced, the reports did not fade, they multiplied. In 1879, the crew of the British ship HMS Vulture observed a phenomenon in the Persian Gulf that would later be described as rotating wheels of light. The account published in the journal Nature described massive luminous formations moving beneath the surface, spokes of light radiating outward from a central point, rotating slowly like the gears of some vast submerged mechanism. The sight lasted for nearly half an hour before fading into darkness. Decades later, in 1906, sailors aboard the SS Delta reported a similar encounter in the South China Sea. Witnesses described enormous wheels of light, each one spanning several hundred meters, rotating in opposite directions and illuminating the water with an eerie pale glow. The phenomenon was visible for over an hour and was corroborated by multiple crew members, yet no explanation was ever found. These are not isolated incidents. They are part of a larger pattern, a global mosaic of sightings that stretches across oceans and centuries, uniting witnesses who have never met and will never meet, but who share a single, undeniable experience. They have seen something in the water that should not be there. The modern era brought new tools, but it also brought new mysteries. During World War II, submarine crews on both sides of the conflict reported encounters with unidentified underwater objects, fast-moving contacts on sonar that could not be explained as enemy vessels. lights seen through periscopes glowing in the depths where no ship had any reason to be there. Allied submariners began referring to them as ghost rockets, phantom contacts that appeared and vanished with no discernible pattern. One particularly striking account came from a Soviet submarine operating in the Pacific in the 1960s. The crew reported tracking 6 luminous objects, moving at speeds exceeding 230 kilometers per hour, far faster than any known submarine or torpedo. The objects appeared to be aware of the vessel's presence, mirroring its movements and maintaining a consistent distance. When the submarine surfaced, the objects ascended as well, breaking through the surface and disappearing into the sky. Into the sky. This blurring of boundaries between sea and air, between submerged and aerial phenomena, is one of the most intriguing aspects of USO reports. It suggests that whatever these objects are, they are not confined to a single environment. They move between realms as easily as light moves through water. In 1992, the crew of a fishing vessel off the coast of Argentina observed a large, disc-shaped object hovering just above the surface of the ocean. As they watched, it descended slowly into the water, submerging completely without creating any splash or disturbance. Moments later, a greenish glow appeared beneath the waves, moving away from the ship at high speed. The crew reported the sighting to authorities, but no investigation was conducted. Similar accounts have been documented off the coasts of Chile, Norway, Japan, and the United States. In many cases, the witnesses are experienced mariners, captains, naval officers, fishermen, people whose livelihoods depend on understanding the behavior of the sea. These are not individuals prone to fantasy or exaggeration. They are observers trained to trust their instruments and their eyes. And yet, time and again, they report things that defy both. One of the most compelling cases comes from the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group in 2014 and 2015. Naval aviators flying off the coast of Virginia reported repeated encounters with unidentified objects that demonstrated flight characteristics unlike any known aircraft. Some of these objects were observed transitioning from air to water seamlessly, disappearing beneath the surface without slowing down or altering course. Radar operators confirmed that the objects could descend from high altitude to sea level in seconds, a maneuver that would generate G-forces capable of destroying any human-piloted craft. The Pentagon later confirmed that these encounters were real. The footage was declassified. The pilots were debriefed. And yet no explanation was provided. The objects remain unidentified. The question remains unanswered. What are these things? Some researchers suggest advanced drone technology, experimental craft developed in secret by military programs operating outside public oversight. This explanation accounts for the structured appearance of some sightings and the apparent control exhibited by the objects. But it does not explain the historical accounts. It does not explain the rotating wheels of light seen in the 1800s or the ghost fires reported by ancient mariners. Drones are a product of the 21st century. The lights are not. Others point to natural phenomena. Bioluminescence, for instance, can create stunning displays of light in the ocean. Certain species of plankton emit a blue-green glow when disturbed, and under the right conditions, entire stretches of water can illuminate like a liquid galaxy. Volcanic activity on the seafloor can produce flashes of light. Gas releases, methane bubbling up from underwater vents, can ignite in the presence of oxygen, creating brief bursts of flame. These explanations are reasonable. They are grounded in established science, and they may account for some sightings, but they do not account for all of them. They do not explain the structured formations, the intelligent movement, the objects that transition between water and air. They do not explain the sonar contacts that move faster than any known marine animal or machine. They do not explain the silence, because that is one of the most unnerving aspects of these encounters, the absence of sound. Witnesses describe lights that move through the water without creating turbulence, without generating noise, without leaving any trace of their passage. It is as though they slip through the ocean like ghosts, unbound by the physical laws that govern propulsion and resistance. And then there are the reports that venture even further into the unknown. In some cases, witnesses describe not just lights, but shapes, structures, metallic surfaces reflecting the beams of searchlights, craft with defined edges and contours hovering in the water as though suspended by invisible forces. In 1967, fishermen off the coast of Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, observed a large object crash into the ocean. Multiple witnesses saw it descend, glowing with a yellow light before disappearing beneath the waves. Rescue teams were dispatched. Divers searched the area, but nothing was ever recovered. The official explanation was that it was likely an aircraft, but no aircraft was reported missing. No debris was found. The object simply vanished. Cases like this challenge the boundary between observation and interpretation. They force us to ask, at what point does an anomaly become something more? At what point does a collection of sightings, each one strange but individually dismissible, coalesce into a pattern that demands investigation? Perhaps the answer lies not in any single encounter, but in the accumulation of them, in the sheer volume of testimony spanning centuries, cultures, and technologies, in the consistency of the details, the lights, the silence, the impossible speeds, the transitions between air and water. Perhaps the answer lies in recognizing that the ocean, for all our advances, remains a frontier, a place where the known and the unknown still meet, where the line between the terrestrial and the otherworldly blurs beneath the weight of salt and pressure and time. And as we consider these accounts, these blue beacons glowing in the dark, we must ask ourselves, are we seeing the edges of something vast and organized? Or are we simply projecting meaning onto the chaos of an indifferent ocean? The lights do not answer. They never have. They simply appear, pulse, and fade, like messages written in a language we do not yet speak, like signals from a civilization we have not yet learned to hear. But if the lights are signals, then perhaps some places hear them louder than others. Some coastlines, some waters, some hidden depths where the encounters are not rare anomalies, but recurring events. Places where the mystery is not a whisper, but a presence. And off the coast of California, in the cold Pacific waters near the Channel Islands, one such place exists.
Chapter 4. The Catalina Enigma. The Channel Islands lie 30 kilometers off the Southern California coast, scattered across the Pacific like the remnants of some ancient sunken world. 8 islands in total, though only a few are inhabited. The rest belong to wind and gulls and the slow, patient erosion of stone by water. They are beautiful in a raw, desolate way, cliffs plunging into the sea, kelp forests swaying in the currents, sea lions barking from rocky outcrops beneath skies that stretch forever. But beneath the surface, something else moves. Fishermen know it. Divers know it. The locals, those who have lived near these waters for decades, speak of it in cautious tones, the way people speak of things they cannot quite name. They describe lights in the water, glowing forms that rise from the deep, hover near the surface, and then descend again into the blackness. Shapes that move with purpose, tracing paths through the ocean as though following invisible roads. And they describe these encounters not as rare events, but as patterns, repeating phenomena. Lights that appear in the same locations at predictable intervals, as though the ocean here is host to something that follows a rhythm, a schedule, a logic of its own. This is the Catalina Enigma. The first recorded sighting dates back to the early 1900s, though local indigenous groups, particularly the Tongva people, have stories that stretch back much further. They spoke of lights in the water and spirits that lived beneath the waves, beings that could rise from the deep and move across the surface of the sea. Missionaries and settlers dismissed these stories as folklore, but the fishermen did not. By the 1930s, accounts of strange underwater lights were appearing in local newspapers. Fishermen returning from night expeditions reported seeing glowing discs beneath their boats, illuminating the kelp and sending schools of fish scattering in all directions. Some described the lights as stationary, hovering in place for minutes at a time. Others said they moved, slowly at first, then accelerating to speeds that no marine animal could achieve. In 1947, a group of divers exploring the waters near Santa Catalina Island reported an encounter that would become one of the most detailed on record. They were descending to investigate a reef when they noticed a faint glow emanating from deeper water. Curious, they swam toward it. As they approached, the light grew brighter, revealing a large, disc-shaped object resting on the seafloor. The object was metallic, smooth, and reflected their dive lights with an almost mirror-like finish. As they watched, the object began to rise, slowly at first, then faster, ascending vertically through the water column and disappearing toward the surface. The divers reported the encounter to the Coast Guard, but no official investigation was conducted. Decades passed. The sightings continued. In the 1970s, a group of researchers from a local university began documenting reports from fishermen and recreational boaters in the area. Over the course of 5 years, they collected more than 100 eyewitness accounts describing luminous objects moving beneath the surface near the Channel Islands. The descriptions were remarkably consistent. Glowing spheres or discs ranging in size from a few meters to over 30 meters in diameter, moving silently through the water, sometimes alone, sometimes in formations. One particularly intriguing account came from a commercial fisherman who had worked the waters off Catalina for over 20 years. He described an encounter in which his boat's electronics malfunctioned as a large, glowing object passed beneath the hull. The compass spun wildly, the radio filled with static. The sonar displayed erratic readings. massive contacts appearing and disappearing with no discernible pattern. The phenomenon lasted for approximately 10 minutes, after which the object descended and vanished, and the electronics returned to normal. He filed a report with the Coast Guard. The incident was logged, but no explanation was ever provided. By the 1990s, advances in underwater technology allowed for more systematic exploration of the region. Sonar surveys mapped the seafloor in greater detail than ever before, revealing a landscape of underwater canyons, seamounts, and deep basins, terrain that could easily conceal large objects or provide natural hiding places for unknown marine life. But the surveys also revealed something else: anomalous sonar contacts, objects that appeared on instruments but could not be visually confirmed. Contacts that moved at speeds inconsistent with marine animals or known watercraft.
One such contact was tracked by a research vessel in 1993. The object appeared on sonar at a depth of approximately 600 meters, moving at an estimated speed of 120 kilometers per hour. The vessel's crew attempted to track it, but the object descended rapidly, disappearing from instruments at a depth beyond the range of the sonar. The encounter was documented in the ship's log, but again, no official investigation followed. Why? Some suggest that the military already knows. The Channel Islands are located near several naval installations, including the Point Mugu Naval Air Weapons Station and the San Clemente Island Naval Auxiliary Landing Field. These facilities conduct underwater testing of advanced propulsion systems, unmanned submersibles, and experimental sonar technologies. It is possible, likely even, that some of the sightings can be attributed to classified military operations. But this explanation does not account for the historical reports. It does not explain the lights seen in the 1930s or the indigenous stories that predate modern technology by centuries. It does not explain the diver's encounter in 1947, when no such technology existed. And it does not explain the patterns, because that is perhaps the most compelling aspect of the Catalina enigma: the consistency. The lights appear in the same areas, at similar times, exhibiting similar behavior. They are not random. They are not chaotic. They follow a rhythm, as though something beneath these waters operates according to its own internal logic. As though the ocean here is home to something that has been present for a very long time, something that was here before we arrived, and will likely remain long after we are gone. Local researchers have proposed several theories. Some suggest that the area is a hotspot for rare bioluminescent organisms, perhaps a species not yet cataloged by science, capable of producing light displays far more intense than anything currently known. Others point to underwater volcanic activity or gas vents that could create optical illusions under certain conditions. And then there are those who suggest something more radical, that the Channel Islands sit above an underwater structure, a base, perhaps, a facility, not human-made, but not entirely natural either. A place where something resides, hidden in the deep, emerging only occasionally to the surface, drawn by curiosity, necessity, or reasons we cannot begin to fathom. This theory, of course, ventures into the realm of speculation. But speculation is not the same as fantasy. Speculation is the first step of inquiry. It is the question that precedes the investigation. And in a region where the ocean floor remains largely unexplored,
where sonar reveals shapes but not answers, where witnesses continue to report phenomena that defy conventional explanation, speculation may be the most honest response we can offer. The lights are still seen. Even now, in the 21st century, reports continue to emerge from the waters near Catalina. Boaters post videos online showing luminous objects moving beneath the surface. Divers describe encounters with glowing spheres that seem to react to their presence, moving closer or retreating, depending on the diver's actions. Fishermen return to port with stories of nights when the ocean beneath them lit up like a submerged city, glowing with a light that had no source they could name. And the Coast Guard, the Navy, the researchers, they listen, they document, but they do not explain. Because perhaps there is no explanation, not yet. Not with the tools and understanding we currently possess. Or perhaps the explanation exists, but it is not one we are ready to accept. Because to accept it would mean acknowledging that our maps are incomplete, that our oceans, for all our exploration, remain frontier territory, that we share this planet with something we have not yet met, something that moves through the water like light through darkness, silent and purposeful, leaving only questions in its wake. And if the lights are signals, if they are messages, then perhaps the ocean itself is trying to tell us something, not through words, but through presence. Not through revelation, but through repetition. A lullaby sung in a language older than sound. But the lights are not the only mystery the ocean holds, because light, as it turns out, is only half the story. The other half is sound. And in the deepest trenches of the Pacific, where pressure crushes stone and darkness is absolute, strange sounds have been recorded, sounds that do not fit into any known catalog of marine life or geological activity. Sounds that some believe may be voices, or something like voices. And it is to those sounds, to the deep choir singing in the blackness, that we now turn.
Chapter 5. The ocean is never silent. Even in the deepest trenches where sunlight has never reached and pressure would collapse a human body in an instant, there is sound. The creak of shifting tectonic plates, the rumble of underwater volcanoes, the faint rhythmic pulse of ocean currents moving through submarine canyons. And beneath it all, woven into the fabric of the water itself, there is a chorus, an acoustic landscape of clicks, groans, whistles, and hums produced by the creatures that live in the deep. We have learned to recognize many of these sounds. The songs of whales, complex and haunting, traveling thousands of kilometers through the water. The echolocation clicks of dolphins. The snapping of pistol shrimp, so loud it can stun prey. These are the sounds of known life, documented and cataloged, understood within the framework of marine biology. But there are other sounds. Sounds that do not fit. Sounds that appear in recordings and leave researchers baffled, unable to assign them to any known source. Sounds that are too loud, too structured, too strange to be easily dismissed. And some believe these sounds may be more than natural phenomena. They may be communication. In 1997, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, detected an ultra-low frequency sound in the South Pacific, picked up by underwater microphones, hydrophones, stationed thousands of kilometers apart. The sound was loud enough to be detected across the entire Pacific basin, and its frequency pattern was unlike anything previously recorded. Researchers nicknamed it the Bloop. The bloop rose rapidly in frequency over the course of about a minute, creating a sound profile that resembled the vocalizations of marine mammals, but at a scale far larger than any known creature. If it had been produced by an animal, that animal would have to be significantly larger than a blue whale, the largest creature ever known to exist on Earth. Speculation ran wild. Could there be an undiscovered species lurking in the abyss? Some enormous leviathan hidden in the trenches, calling out across the ocean? The idea captured the public imagination, spawning documentaries, articles, and theories that ranged from the scientific to the fantastical. But in 2005, NOAA offered a more mundane explanation. The bloop was most likely the sound of an ice quake, a massive fracture occurring within an Antarctic ice shelf, producing a sound that traveled through the water and was amplified by the ocean's acoustic properties. This explanation was widely accepted. The mystery, it seemed, was solved. And yet, other sounds remain unexplained. In 1991, hydrophones in the Pacific detected a sound that researchers called upsweep, a long, continuous tone that rises in frequency, repeating seasonally and occurring most often in the spring and fall. The sound has been recorded for decades, and while some researchers believe it is linked to volcanic activity, its exact source has never been confirmed. Then there is the whistle. Recorded in 1997 near the Mariana Trench. The sound resembles a musical tone, rising and falling in pitch, lasting for several seconds before fading. It has been detected multiple times, always in deep water, always at frequencies that suggest a large source, but never conclusively linked to any known geological or biological phenomenon. And perhaps most enigmatic of all is the Julia. A sound recorded in 1999 off the coast of South America. The Julia is a short, powerful burst of sound, less than 15 seconds, but loud enough to be detected by sensors over 5,000 kilometers apart. Its acoustic signature does not match any known marine animal, any volcanic event, or any man-made source. It remains, to this day, unidentified. These sounds are not isolated incidents. They are part of a larger acoustic mystery, an ongoing collection of recordings that defy easy explanation. Some researchers suggest that many of these sounds are simply geological in origin, the product of underwater landslides, shifting ice, or volcanic tremors. And that may well be true. The Earth is a dynamic, restless planet, and the ocean floor is as geologically active as any terrestrial landscape. But what if some of these sounds are not geological? What if some of them are technological? Consider the properties of sound in water. Sound travels approximately 4 times faster in water than in air, and it can cover vast distances with minimal loss of energy. This makes the ocean an ideal medium for long-range communication. Marine mammals have evolved to exploit this property, using sound to communicate across hundreds of kilometers. Whales sing to one another across entire ocean basins. Dolphins use echolocation to navigate and hunt in total darkness. If an intelligent species were to inhabit the deep ocean, whether terrestrial in origin or otherwise, it would likely rely on sound as its primary means of communication and navigation. Light, after all, is useless in the abyss. Vision becomes irrelevant at depths where darkness is absolute. But sound? Sound is the language of the deep. And if such a species existed, if it had developed technology capable of surviving the crushing pressures and extreme conditions of the ocean floor, then it would need a way to communicate, not just locally, but across great distances. And the sounds it produced might be unlike anything we have encountered before. Structured, rhythmic, purposeful, but alien to our ears. This is speculation, of course, but it is speculation grounded in logic. If we are willing to entertain the possibility of unidentified submerged objects moving through the water, then we must also entertain the possibility of unidentified submerged sounds, signals transmitted through the ocean intended for receivers we cannot see, carrying messages we cannot decode.
Chapter 6: The Architects of Silence. Let us engage for a moment in an exercise of imagination. Suppose you were not human. Suppose you were a traveler, an intelligence from elsewhere, arriving at this blue planet for the first time. You have crossed the void between stars. You have navigated the cold, airless dark of space, guided by instruments and mathematics, searching for worlds that might sustain life. And you have found one: Earth. But you do not land in the deserts or the forests. You do not descend into the cities where lights blaze against the night. You do not make contact with the species that builds towers and roads and broadcasts signals into space. You do something else entirely. You go beneath the waves. Why? Because the ocean offers something no terrestrial environment can: concealment, anonymity, protection. The ocean covers 71% of the planet's surface. It is vast, deep, and largely unexplored by the dominant species. It is a place where you can exist without interference, where you can observe without being observed, where you can build without drawing attention. And if your physiology, your technology, or your intentions require isolation, the ocean is the perfect sanctuary. This is not science fiction. This is strategic reasoning. And it is a scenario that some researchers, particularly those studying unidentified aerial phenomena and their oceanic counterparts, have begun to take seriously. If we accept the premise that some USOs and UAPs may represent non-human intelligence, whether extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or something else entirely, then we must also consider where such intelligence might reside. And the deep ocean, for all its hostility to human life, may be ideal for others. Consider the advantages. First, pressure. The crushing weight of water at depth is lethal to humans, but it need not be lethal to all forms of life or all forms of technology. If a species evolved in a high-pressure environment, or if their technology is designed to withstand such forces, then the ocean floor becomes not a barrier, but a refuge, a place where human exploration is limited and human presence is rare.
Second, temperature regulation. The deep ocean is cold, but it is consistently cold. There are no seasonal fluctuations, no day-night cycles, no weather patterns. For a civilization that values stability, this is an asset. And near hydrothermal vents, where superheated water erupts from the Earth's crust, there is access to energy, geothermal energy, unlimited and renewable, capable of powering technology for millennia. Third, resources. The ocean is rich in minerals, dissolved gases, and organic compounds. The sea floor contains vast deposits of rare earth elements, metals, and methane hydrates. For a technological civilization, this represents a nearly inexhaustible supply of raw materials. And extraction could occur far from human eyes, deep in the trenches where no one is watching. Fourth, observation. From the ocean, it is possible to monitor the surface world without being detected. Submersible craft could rise at night, observe coastal cities, study human behavior, and return to the deep before dawn. Sensors could be placed on the sea floor, listening to ship traffic, tracking military movements, gathering data, all without ever revealing their presence. And fifth, discretion. If contact is not the goal, if the purpose is study, resource gathering, or simply waiting, then the ocean provides the perfect veil. Humanity looks up. We search the skies for signs of life. We listen for radio signals from distant stars. But we rarely look down. We rarely commit the resources required to map and monitor the ocean floor. And so anything residing there could remain hidden indefinitely. This is not to say that such a civilization exists. It is to say that if it did exist, the ocean would be the logical place to find it. But let us take this one step further. Let us consider not visitors from another world, but inhabitants of this one. Beings that evolved here, in the deep, long before humanity climbed down from the trees. Beings that took a different evolutionary path, one that led not to the surface, but deeper into the abyss. Beings that developed intelligence in isolation, building their civilization in the dark, in the cold, in the crushing silence of the deep ocean. This idea, too, is speculative, but it is not without precedent. Evolution has produced intelligence multiple times on Earth. Dolphins, whales, octopuses all exhibit complex problem-solving, communication, and social structures. And they are aquatic. They have adapted to life in water in ways that challenge our terrestrial assumptions about what intelligence requires. An octopus, for instance, has no centralized brain in the way mammals do. Its neurons are distributed throughout its body, allowing each arm to process information independently. It can change color and texture in an instant, blending seamlessly with its environment. It can solve puzzles, use tools, and escape from enclosures that would confine most animals. And it does all of this without ever leaving the water. Now imagine a species that evolved further along this path. A species that developed not just problem-solving, but abstract thought, not just camouflage, but technology, not just survival, but culture. A species that built structures on the sea floor, cultivated energy sources, and created tools to navigate the depths. A species that, by the time humanity emerged, was already ancient. Would we recognize them? Would we even think to look? Or would we dismiss the signs, the lights, the sounds, the sonar contacts as anomalies, as natural phenomena, as glitches in our instruments? This is the challenge of recognizing intelligence that does not resemble our own. We search for radio signals, but perhaps they communicate through sound waves in water. We look for megastructures in space, but perhaps their cities are carved into underwater canyons. We expect contact on our terms, but perhaps they have no interest in contact at all. Perhaps they are content to remain hidden, observing us as we observe marine life in aquariums, curious but distant, engaged but separate. And perhaps, and this is the most unsettling possibility, they are not hiding at all. Perhaps they are simply living their lives in full view, and we lack the awareness to see them. Perhaps the lights, the sounds, the sonar contacts are not anomalies, but routine, not mysteries, but daily activities. And we, in our ignorance, interpret them as strange because we cannot imagine any other explanation. This is humbling.
This is humbling. It forces us to confront the limits of our perception, to acknowledge that there may be entire dimensions of reality unfolding around us, beneath us, and we are blind to them, not because they are invisible, but because we have not learned how to look. And yet, for all this speculation, we must also remain grounded. We must remember that imagination is not evidence, that possibility is not proof, that the unknown is not a blank canvas onto which we can project whatever narrative we find most compelling. The ocean may harbor secrets. It may contain life we have not yet discovered, intelligence we have not yet recognized, technology we have not yet understood. Or it may simply be what it appears to be, a vast, dynamic, largely empty expanse of water, home to fish and plankton and the slow, patient processes of geology. Both possibilities coexist. Both deserve consideration. And the truth, when we find it, will likely be stranger and more nuanced than either extreme. But until that day comes, until we have mapped every trench and explored every canyon and listened to every sound the ocean produces, the question remains: are we alone in the deep? Or is something there, beneath the surface, watching us as we watch the stars, wondering perhaps if we will ever learn to see what has been there all along? The lights do not answer. The sounds do not explain. The ocean keeps its secrets as it always has. And we, standing at the edge of the water, can only wonder. But wonder is not the same as fantasy. Wonder is curiosity sharpened by evidence. And the evidence, scattered and incomplete though it may be, points to something real, something that moves,
something that glows, something that in its silence may be speaking a language we are only beginning to hear. And as we drift deeper into this mystery, as we peel back the layers of darkness and light, we find ourselves returning to the natural world, to the bioluminescence that already exists in the ocean, to the living light that has evolved over millions of years, creating its own galaxies in the deep. Because before we search for alien light, we must first understand the light that is already here. The light that pulses through jellyfish and plankton, through squid and fish, through creatures that have learned to speak through glow rather than sound. And in that light, we may find the key to understanding everything else. Chapter 7: Dreams of Bioluminescence. There is a moment just after sunset when the ocean transforms. The sky fades from blue to violet to black, and the boundary between sea and sky dissolves into a single, unbroken darkness. But beneath the surface, something else is happening. As night falls, the deep begins to glow. Not with the harsh brightness of electric light, but with a softer, gentler luminescence, organic and alive, pulsing through the water like fireflies in a summer meadow. This is bioluminescence, the living light of the ocean, produced by countless organisms that have evolved the ability to emit their own glow. It is one of the most beautiful phenomena in nature, and it may also be one of the most misunderstood. Bioluminescence is not rare. It is not confined to a few exotic species living in the deepest trenches. It is everywhere. In the surface waters where plankton bloom and sparkle with every wave, in the midwater zones where jellyfish drift like lanterns through the dark, in the abyss where anglerfish dangle glowing lures to attract prey. It is estimated that more than 70% of marine organisms are capable of producing light in some form. This is a planet of living light. And if we do not understand that, if we do not recognize the extent to which the ocean already glows, then we risk mistaking the natural for the supernatural. We risk seeing alien intelligence where there is only biology. But let us be clear. Bioluminescence is extraordinary in its own right. It does not need to be mysterious to be wondrous. The mechanism is chemical. Most bioluminescent organisms produce light through a reaction involving a molecule called luciferin and an enzyme called luciferase. When luciferin is oxidized, it releases energy in the form of light. This light is cold. There is no heat involved, no combustion, no waste. It is pure efficiency. Evolution's answer to the problem of visibility in a world without sunlight. And the purposes of this light are as varied as the species that produce it. Some organisms use bioluminescence for defense. Certain species of plankton emit bursts of light when disturbed, startling predators or attracting larger predators to eat the ones that threaten them. It is a biological alarm system, turning the predator into prey. Others use it for camouflage. Some squid and fish have light-producing organs on their undersides that match the faint glow of sunlight filtering down from above, erasing their silhouettes and making them invisible to predators looking up from below. This is called counter-illumination, and it is one of the most elegant solutions to survival in the twilight zone. Still others use light for communication. Firefly squid gather in massive schools off the coast of Japan, flashing in synchronized patterns that ripple through the water like waves. Certain species of jellyfish pulse with rhythmic light, possibly to coordinate movement or signal reproductive readiness. And the Hawaiian bobtail squid hosts colonies of bioluminescent bacteria in a specialized organ, using their glow to navigate and hunt in the dark. And then there is attraction. The most famous example is the anglerfish, with its glowing lure dangling in front of its jaws, drawing prey close before striking. But there are subtler examples as well. Some deep-sea shrimp produce clouds of luminous fluid, disorienting predators and allowing the shrimp to escape. Some worms build glowing traps, weaving sticky threads that shimmer in the dark, ensnaring anything that swims too close. Bioluminescence is not just light. It is language, strategy, survival, and it is everywhere. So, when witnesses report seeing lights in the ocean, the first question we must ask is, could this be bioluminescence? In many cases, the answer is yes. The glowing wakes left behind by ships at night are often caused by a disturbed plankton emitting light in response to the turbulence. The shimmering patches of water seen off tropical coasts are blooms of dinoflagellates, single-celled organisms that glow when agitated. The eerie milky seas reported by sailors, vast stretches of ocean that glow with a uniform ghostly light, are likely caused by massive colonies of bioluminescent bacteria. These phenomena are natural. They are well documented, and they account for a significant percentage of reported ocean lights. But not all of them.
Because bioluminescence, for all its beauty and diversity, has limits. It is typically blue or green, wavelengths that travel farthest in water. It is usually faint, visible only in darkness and often only at close range. It is organic, which means it responds to environmental cues, temperature, pressure, movement. And it is distributed. Bioluminescent organisms do not form tight geometric formations. They do not move in straight lines or perfect circles. They do not hover in place for extended periods. They drift. They scatter. They follow the currents. So when witnesses describe structured lights, lights that move with precision, that maintain fixed distances from one another, that ascend and descend vertically, bioluminescence becomes a less satisfying explanation. It may explain the glow, but it does not explain the behavior. And that is where the boundary between the natural and the unknown begins to blur. Consider the rotating wheels of light, reported in the Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf, massive formations spanning hundreds of meters, rotating slowly beneath the surface. Some researchers have suggested these could be caused by bioluminescent plankton disturbed by underwater currents, swirling in circular patterns.
But the witnesses described the wheels as sharply defined, with distinct spokes radiating from a central point. They described them as lasting for extended periods, sometimes over an hour, without dispersing or fading. And they described them as appearing in the same locations repeatedly, as though triggered by something other than random chance. Could plankton create such a display? Perhaps. Under the right conditions, specific current patterns, high concentrations of bioluminescent organisms, calm seas, it is theoretically possible. But it is not typical, and it does not explain why the phenomenon is so rare, so localized, so consistent in its structure. Or consider the glowing spheres reported by divers, objects the size of beach balls or larger, hovering in mid-water, pulsing with light. Some of these sightings may be jellyfish. The lion's mane jellyfish, for instance, can grow quite large and exhibits a faint glow under certain conditions. But jellyfish do not hover. They drift. They do not move horizontally at speed. They do not respond to the presence of divers by retreating or advancing. And yet, some witnesses describe exactly that kind of interaction. One diver, exploring a reef off the coast of Belize, reported an encounter with a glowing sphere that seemed to follow him. As he swam, the sphere moved parallel to his path, maintaining a constant distance. When he stopped, it stopped. When he ascended, it ascended. He described the light as steady, not pulsing, and far brighter than any bioluminescent organism he had encountered before. When he finally surfaced, the light descended and disappeared. This is not the behavior of plankton or jellyfish. This is something else. So we are left with the question, at what point does bioluminescence cease to be an adequate explanation? At what point do we acknowledge that some lights in the ocean, though they may resemble living light, do not behave like it? Perhaps the answer lies not in choosing between the natural and the unknown, but in recognizing that the two may overlap, that the ocean is so full of life, so saturated with organisms that glow and pulse and communicate through light, that it becomes a medium capable of producing phenomena we do not yet understand. That the line between biology and technology, between the organic and the artificial, may not be as clear as we assume. After all, life on Earth has been engineering light for hundreds of millions of years. So why should we be surprised if intelligence, whether human, terrestrial, or otherwise, has learned to do the same? And if that intelligence wanted to move through the ocean undetected, what better camouflage than to mimic the light that already exists? To glow like plankton, to pulse like jellyfish, to blend so seamlessly into the natural bioluminescence of the sea that no one would think to look twice. This is speculation, yes, but it is grounded in the logic of adaptation. Camouflage is one of the oldest strategies in nature, and in an ocean that already glows, mimicking that glow would be the perfect disguise. So as we witness the lights, whether natural, technological, or something in between, we must remember that the ocean is not a blank canvas. It is a living tapestry woven from light and darkness, biology and chemistry, pattern and chaos. And within that tapestry, it is possible for both the mundane and the miraculous to coexist. The bioluminescent plankton blooming off the California coast are real. So are the sonar contacts tracked by naval vessels. Both are true. Both are documented, and both remind us that the ocean is far stranger, far richer, far more alive than we often remember.
But not everyone is ready to accept mystery. Not everyone is willing to sit in the uncertainty and let the questions remain unanswered. And so for every witness who reports a light in the water, there is a skeptic who offers an explanation. For every sonar contact, a rationalization. For every strange sound, a geological cause. And that too is important, because science progresses not through belief, but through doubt, through the rigorous testing of claims, the careful examination of evidence, the willingness to say, we do not know, but here is what we can rule out. And it is to those skeptics, those grounded voices of reason, that we now turn.
Chapter 8. The Skeptic's Horizon. Let us pause for a moment and step back from the edge of wonder. Let us return to solid ground, or as solid as ground can be when the subject is the ocean. Let us listen to the voices that urge caution, that remind us to distinguish between observation and interpretation, between mystery and mistake. Because for every light seen in the water, there is a scientist who can offer an explanation. And those explanations, though they may lack the allure of the unknown, are no less important. They are, in fact, essential. Because science does not begin with belief, it begins with doubt, with the question, could there be another explanation? And that question, asked honestly and repeatedly, is what separates investigation from fantasy. So let us ask it now. Let us examine the skeptical perspective, not to dismiss the mystery, but to understand it more fully, to see where the explanations hold and where they begin to fray. First, bioluminescence. We have already explored this in depth, but it bears repeating. The ocean is full of organisms that produce light. Plankton, jellyfish, squid, fish. Entire ecosystems glow in the dark. When a sailor reports seeing lights in the water, the most likely explanation is that they are witnessing a natural bioluminescent event. A bloom of dinoflagellates, a school of glowing fish, a jellyfish drifting past the hull. This explanation is not speculative. It is well documented. Bioluminescence is real, it is common, and it accounts for the vast majority of reported ocean lights. But, and this is important, it does not account for all of them. It does not explain the structured formations, the high-speed movements, the sonar contacts that correspond with visual sightings. It does not explain the historical reports that predate modern understanding of bioluminescence, or the consistency of descriptions across time and geography. So, bioluminescence is part of the answer, but it is not the whole answer. Second, underwater gas releases. Methane and other gases trapped beneath the seafloor can occasionally burst free, creating bubbles that rise to the surface. In rare cases, these bubbles can ignite if they come into contact with oxygen or a heat source, producing brief flashes of light. This phenomenon is sometimes called a cold flame, and it has been observed in certain regions with active seabed gas deposits. Could this explain some sightings? Possibly, particularly those involving brief, localized flashes of light. But it does not explain sustained glows, moving lights, and the large-scale formations reported by witnesses. Methane bubbles rise quickly and disperse. They do not hover. They do not move horizontally. they do not organize themselves into patterns. So, gas releases are another piece of the puzzle, but again, not the whole picture. Third, military activity. This is perhaps the most compelling skeptical explanation, particularly for sightings near coastal regions or naval installations. The world's navies possess advanced submersible technology, unmanned underwater vehicles, experimental propulsion systems, sonar jamming drones. Many of these systems are classified, and their capabilities are not publicly disclosed. It is entirely plausible that some USO sightings are the result of secret military tests. A glowing drone moving through the water at high speed, designed to evade detection, could easily be mistaken for something anomalous. The same is true for acoustic phenomena. Certain sonar frequencies, certain types of propulsion, could produce sounds that do not match known marine life or geological activity. This explanation is logical. It is grounded in known technology, and it likely accounts for a significant number of modern sightings, particularly those occurring near military zones. But once again, it does not account for the historical reports. It does not explain the rotating wheels of light seen in the 1800s, before submarines existed. It does not explain the indigenous accounts that stretch back centuries. And it does not explain why sightings occur in remote regions, far from any known military presence. So, military activity is part of the answer, but it is not complete. Fourth, optical illusions. The human eye is not a perfect instrument. It can be fooled by reflections, by atmospheric conditions, by the play of moonlight on water. What appears to be a light beneath the surface may in some cases be a reflection of a light above, a star, a ship, an aircraft. What appears to be movement may be the motion of the observer, creating the illusion that an object is moving when it is in fact stationary.
This is a valid concern. Eyewitness testimony, particularly under conditions of darkness and fatigue, is notoriously unreliable. People see what they expect to see. They fill in gaps with assumptions. They misremember details. But optical illusions do not explain sonar contacts. They do not explain radar tracks. They do not explain cases where multiple witnesses, using different instruments, all report the same phenomenon. They do not explain the encounters documented by trained naval personnel, who are specifically trained to distinguish between genuine contacts and false positives. So optical illusions are a factor, but they are not sufficient. Fifth, undiscovered marine life. The ocean is vast, and we have only begun to catalog its inhabitants. New species are discovered regularly, sometimes large species, creatures that have evaded detection for decades or longer. The megamouth shark, for instance, was unknown to science until 1976, despite being several meters long. The colossal squid was considered a myth until a specimen was captured in 2007. Could there be other creatures out there, undiscovered, capable of producing light displays or sounds that we have not yet documented? Absolutely. This is not speculation, it is probability. The deep ocean is the least explored environment on Earth, and it almost certainly harbors species we have never seen. But again, this explanation has limits.
undiscovered species would still be subject to the laws of biology. They would still need to eat, reproduce, and move in ways consistent with evolutionary pressures. They would not exhibit the kinds of structured, precise movements described in some USO reports. They would not transition seamlessly between water and air. They would not evade all attempts at capture or documentation. So undiscovered marine life is part of the story, but it is not the final chapter. What we are left with, then, is a mosaic, a collection of explanations, each one valid in its own context, each one capable of accounting for some sightings, but not all. The skeptical perspective does not dismiss the mystery, it reframes it. It says, yes, there are lights in the water. Yes, there are sounds we cannot explain. But before we leap to extraordinary conclusions, let us first rule out the ordinary. And that is a fair approach. It is the foundation of scientific inquiry. But here is where the skeptic's horizon begins to fade, because ruling out the ordinary requires data. It requires investigation. It requires funding, resources, and attention. And the ocean, for all its importance, receives remarkably little of any of those things. We spend more money exploring space than we do exploring the deep sea. We have better maps of Mars than we do of the ocean floor. We have sent probes to the outer edges of the solar system, but we have visited the deepest trenches of the Pacific only a handful of times. And so, when witnesses report something strange in the water, when sonar tracks an anomalous contact, when hydrophones pick up an unidentified sound, there is often no follow-up, no investigation, no attempt to gather additional data. The incident is logged, filed, and forgotten. This is not the fault of the skeptics. It is the result of priorities. The ocean is not seen as a frontier in the way space is. It is not romanticized in the same way, and so it does not receive the same level of scrutiny. But that does not mean the mystery is solved. It means the mystery is ignored. And that, perhaps, is the most important thing the skeptic's perspective can teach us. That uncertainty is not the same as impossibility. That we do not know is not the same as it cannot be. That ruling out explanations is only useful if we commit to finding the truth, not simply defaulting to the most convenient narrative. The lights are still seen. The sounds are still recorded. The sonar contacts still appear. And until we explore the ocean with the same rigor we apply to space, until we map every trench and listen to every frequency and follow up on every report, the mystery will endure. Not because it is unsolvable, but because we have not tried hard enough to solve it. And perhaps that is the real message here. Not that the lights are alien, or that the sounds are messages, or that civilization hides in the deep, but that the ocean itself is a message, a reminder how much we do not know, a reflection of our own limitations, a mirror held up to our curiosity, asking, how far are you willing to go? And as we stand at that threshold, as we consider how much further we can descend into the mystery, we find ourselves drawn not outward, but inward. Not toward the lights in the water, but toward the lights in our own minds, toward the question of why we see mystery at all, why we search for signals, why we long in the deepest part of ourselves to believe that we are not alone. Perhaps the secret lights beneath the sea are not signals from them at all. Perhaps they are signals from us.
Chapter 9. Messages in the Dark. There is a story we tell ourselves about the universe. It goes like this: we are alone. Or if we are not alone, we are isolated, separated by distance, by time, by the cold and empty void between stars. We are the only voices calling out into the dark, hoping for an answer that may never come. But what if that story is wrong? Not because aliens exist or do not exist, but because loneliness itself is a construct, a filter through which we interpret every mystery, every signal, every light we cannot explain. What if the secret lights beneath the sea are not messages from an unknown intelligence, but reflections of our own need to find one? This is not cynicism. It is introspection. Because the human mind is extraordinarily good at finding patterns, at seeing faces in clouds, meaning in randomness, intention in chaos. This tendency, called pareidolia, is not a flaw. It is a survival mechanism. Our ancestors, who could quickly identify a predator hiding in the shadows, who could recognize the outline of a friend in the distance, were more likely to survive. And so we evolved to see patterns, even when no pattern exists. But there is a deeper layer to this. Beyond pattern recognition, there is meaning-making. The drive to construct narratives, to impose structure on experience, to transform raw data into story. This is what makes us human. This is what allows us to create art, science, religion, philosophy. We are not content to simply observe. We must interpret. We must ask, what does this mean? And when we encounter something we cannot explain, a light in the water, a sound in the deep, we do not simply file it away as unknown. We reach for explanations. We build hypotheses. And often, consciously or not, we reach for the explanation that resonates most deeply with our inner landscape. For some, that explanation is extraterrestrial intelligence. The idea that we are being watched, studied, perhaps even contacted by beings from another world. This narrative satisfies a profound psychological need, the need to believe that we are not alone, that somewhere in the vastness of the cosmos there is another mind thinking thoughts like ours, another civilization asking the same questions, searching the same skies. For others, the explanation is ancient terrestrial intelligence, the idea that Earth itself harbors secrets, civilizations that predate humanity, species that evolved in parallel to us but took a different path, wisdom hidden in the deep. This narrative satisfies a different need, the need to believe that the world still holds mysteries, that there are places we have not yet explored, knowledge we have not yet acquired, wonders we have not yet encountered. And for still others, the explanation is spiritual. The lights are not craft or creatures, but manifestations of something metaphysical, energies, consciousness. The ocean as a liminal space, a threshold between the material and the immaterial, where the boundaries of reality thin and something else can bleed through. Each of these narratives is valid, not because they are true, we have no way of knowing yet, but because they reflect genuine human concerns, genuine human longings,
And when we look at the lights beneath the sea, we are not just looking at the ocean, we are looking at ourselves. We are projecting our hopes, our fears, our desires onto the dark water, hoping it will reflect something back. This does not mean the lights are not real. They are. The witnesses are not lying. The sonar contacts are not fabricated. The sounds are not imagined. But it does mean that our interpretation of these phenomena is never neutral. It is always colored by who we are, what we believe, what we need the mystery to mean.
And that is worth acknowledging. Because if we are not careful, we can become so invested in a particular explanation that we stop listening to the evidence. We stop asking questions. We stop being open to the possibility that the truth may be stranger or simpler than we expected.
So let us sit for a moment in the uncertainty. Let us resist the urge to fill the silence with answers. Let us simply acknowledge there are lights in the ocean. We do not fully understand them, and that is okay. Because mystery is not a problem to be solved, it is a space to be inhabited, a space where wonder and humility coexist, where we can admit that we do not know everything, and that not knowing is not a failure. It is an invitation. An invitation to explore, to question, to remain curious without demanding immediate resolution. The ocean does not owe us answers. It does not exist to satisfy our need for meaning. It simply is. Vast, deep, ancient, indifferent. And if there are lights in its depths, they are there for reasons that may have nothing to do with us. They may be natural. They may be technological. They may be something we do not yet have words for. Or they may be signals, after all, not from aliens or ancient civilizations, but from the Earth itself, from the processes, biological, geological, chemical, that have been unfolding for billions of years, long before we arrived and long after we are gone. The ocean has its own language, its own rhythms, its own ways of communicating with the world. And perhaps what we are witnessing is not a message intended for us, but simply the Earth speaking to itself. A conversation we are privileged to overhear, even if we do not understand the words. And maybe that is enough. Maybe it is enough to witness, to stand at the edge of the water and watch the lights pulse in the distance, knowing we may never know their source, their purpose, their meaning. Maybe the mystery itself is the message, a reminder that we are small, that the universe is vast, that wonder is not the same as understanding, and that sometimes the most profound experiences are the ones that leave us speechless. Because in the end, whether the lights are natural or artificial, terrestrial or extraterrestrial, the effect is the same. They pull us out of ourselves. They make us look beyond the borders of our daily lives, beyond the concerns that occupy our thoughts, beyond the illusion that we have mapped and mastered the world. They remind us that there is still mystery, still magic, still something out there or down there that we have yet to touch. And that reminder is precious. It is a gift the ocean gives us, whether it intends to or not. So perhaps the secret lights beneath the sea are not messages from them, Perhaps they are messages from the deep itself, from the part of the world that remains wild and unknown, calling to the part of us that longs for wildness, for unknowing, for the thrill of encountering something that cannot be contained or explained. Perhaps they are the ocean's way of saying, I am still here. I am still vast. I still hold secrets you cannot imagine. And we, standing on the shore, can only whisper back, we hear you, we see you, and we are grateful. But gratitude does not erase curiosity. It does not quiet the questions. And so we continue to search. We continue to dive, to listen, to watch. Not because we expect to find answers, but because the search itself has meaning. Because the act of looking is an act of connection, a way of acknowledging that we are part of something larger, something older, that flows through water and light and time. And as we prepare to close this journey, as we prepare to surface from the depths and return to the world above, we carry with us the memory of the lights, the glow in the darkness, the pulse in the silence, the mystery that endures. And we let it be. We let it drift away back into the deep where it belongs. Because some things are not meant to be caught. Some things are meant only to be seen once in the dark and then released. And the ocean, patient and eternal, will keep its secrets a little while longer.
Chapter 10. Where the Currents Sleep. The lights are fading now. One by one, they dim and disappear, slipping back into the depths like dreams receding at dawn. The ocean returns to blackness. The sounds fall silent. The sonar screens go quiet. And we, who have drifted through this mystery for so long, find ourselves surfacing, rising slowly through the water back toward the light, back toward the familiar world. But something has changed. We are not the same as when we descended. We have seen things we cannot explain. We have heard sounds we cannot name. We have stood at the edge of the unknown and looked into it, and though we have not found answers, we have found something more valuable: awe. Because awe is the beginning of wisdom. It is the recognition that we are not the center of the story, that the universe does not revolve around our understanding, that there are forces, biological, geological, cosmic, operating on scales we can barely comprehend, and that our place within them is both humbling and extraordinary. The ocean has taught us this, not through revelation, but through presence, simply by existing, vast, deep, indifferent, alive. It has reminded us that we are small, that our maps are incomplete, that our instruments, for all their precision, can only measure what we know how to look for. And if there is intelligence in the deep, whether it is ours, theirs, or something else entirely, then perhaps it has been watching us all along, not with hostility, but with curiosity, wondering if we will ever learn to listen, wondering if we will ever stop looking up and finally look down, wondering if we will ever realize that the ocean is not a resource to be exploited or a frontier to be conquered, but a world in its own right, a world that was here long before us and will remain long after. And perhaps that is the real secret, not that there are lights in the water, but that the water itself is luminous, that life in all its forms glows, that the earth is not a dead rock hurtling through space, but a living organism, breathing, pulsing, radiating light in 1,000 different wavelengths, most of which we cannot see. Perhaps the lights we seek are not hidden at all. Perhaps they are everywhere, all around us, and we have simply trained ourselves not to notice. We have built cities that drown out the stars. We have filled our days with noise that drowns out the silence. We have become so focused on progress, on technology, on the relentless push toward the future, that we have forgotten how to be present, how to witness, how to simply stand still and let the world reveal itself. But the ocean does not let us forget. It calls to us. It pulls us back. It says, slow down, be still, listen. And when we do, when we quiet the noise and the urgency and the need to know, we hear it. The lullaby beneath the waves, the rhythm of the tides, the ancient, patient song of water moving through stone, through sand, through time. This is the gift the ocean offers, not answers, but presence, not certainty, but mystery. And mystery, when we allow it, becomes a form of grace. So we return to the surface now, carrying that grace with us. We surface into daylight, into air, into the world of human concerns and human schedules. But we do not forget. We cannot forget, because once you have seen the lights, once you have drifted through the dark water and felt the weight of the deep pressing against you, you are changed. You become a witness, a keeper of questions, a person who knows that the world is larger, stranger, and more beautiful than it seems. And you become part of the story, not as a protagonist, but as a voice in the chorus, one among many who have looked into the water and wondered, who have listened to the sounds and tried to understand, who have stood at the edge of the unknown and refused to turn away. This is our place in the mystery, not to solve it, but to honor it, to carry it forward, to share it with others, not as a truth to be proven, but as a question to be held. And so we ask, what will you do with this mystery? Will you dismiss it, file it away as fantasy or delusion? Or will you carry it with you, as so many before you have done? Will you let it change the way you see the world? Will you let it remind you that there is still wonder, still magic, still something out there that cannot be explained? We hope you will. We hope you will look at the ocean differently now, not as a backdrop, not as a resource, but as a frontier, as a world within a world, as a place where the boundaries between the known and the unknown blur and dissolve, and where anything at all might be possible. Because the lights are still there. They have always been there, and they will continue to appear long after we have stopped looking,
long after the videos have been forgotten and the reports have faded and the witnesses have passed into memory. The ocean will keep its secrets, and the lights will keep glowing, and the mystery will endure. And that, perhaps, is as it should be.
Because some questions are not meant to be answered. Some doors are not meant to be opened. Some spaces are meant to remain sacred, untouched, unexplored, held in reverence rather than scrutiny. And the deep ocean, with its lights and its sounds and its silence, may be one of those spaces, a place where we can come not to conquer, but to listen, not to take, but to receive, not to know, but to wonder. So let us leave it there. Let us step back from the edge and let the mystery rest. Let us return to our lives, our cities, our daily rhythms, carrying with us only the memory of the lights, the glow in the darkness, the pulse in the silence, the reminder that the world is vast and we are small, and that is okay. It is more than okay. It is perfect. Because smallness is not insignificance, it is perspective. And perspective, when held lightly, becomes freedom. The freedom to explore without needing to arrive. The freedom to ask without needing to answer. The freedom to simply be present in the mystery, in the moment, in the dark water where the lights still shine. And so we close this journey the way we began it, with a breath. A slow, deep breath drawn from the air above, exhaled into the water below. A breath that connects us to the ocean, to the earth, to the currents that flow through all things. We close with gratitude for the witnesses who spoke, for the scientists who questioned, for the skeptics who grounded us, for the ocean itself, which gave us a story worth telling. And we close with an invitation to you who have drifted with us into the unknown, to you who have listened and wondered and maybe, just maybe, believed. Keep looking, keep listening, keep asking questions. Keep standing at the edge of the water, watching for the lights, because they are there. They have always been there, and they are waiting for someone like you, someone curious, someone patient, someone willing to see. Thank you for drifting with us into the unknown. Thank you for letting the mystery be mystery. Thank you for being here, in this moment, in this darkness, in this strange and beautiful world. The lights are fading now. The ocean is returning to silence, and we, together, are surfacing, rising slowly toward the light, toward the world, toward whatever comes next. But we do not forget. We carry the lights with us, in our memories, in our hearts, in the quiet corners of our minds where wonder lives. And when the world grows too loud, too bright, too certain, we will return. We will close our eyes and remember. We will drift back down into the dark water, into the place where the currents sleep and the lights still glow, and we will be home. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for letting yourself drift, for embracing the uncertainty, for sitting with the questions instead of demanding answers. This is the space we create together, a space where mystery is not a problem, but a gift, where the ocean speaks and we listen, where the lights glow and we witness. If this resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Share your own encounters with the unknown. Tell us what you see when you look into the water. And if you'd like to continue this journey with us into other mysteries, other frontiers, other places where the known and unknown meet, subscribe. Join us. Drift with us again. Because the world is full of stories like this. Stories that ask more than they answer. Stories that invite us to wonder, to dream, to question. And we are only just beginning. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and never stop looking into the dark. The lights are waiting.